The mop bucket scraped across the marble floor, leaving a thin trail of soapy water behind it. Thomas Brennan pushed it toward the corner where someone had spilled coffee again, third time this week in the same spot. He didn't mind, gave him something to do while the lawyers rushed past in their expensive suits, phone pressed to one ear, briefcase swinging. None of them looked at him. The building directory near the entrance listed 47 offices. Thomas knew every single one. He'd been cleaning these halls for 6 years, and before that, the floors had known different hands, but the same indifference. "Excuse me," a woman's voice, sharp and impatient. Thomas stepped aside, pulling his bucket with him. She didn't say thank you, just kept walking, heels clicking against marble like tiny hammers. He was 73 years old and invisible. The morning shift always started the same way. 5 a.m., before anyone else arrived. Thomas unlocked the service entrance with the key they'd given him on his first day. A single brass key on a worn metal ring. No lanyard, no badge, just the key. The hallways always smelled different at this hour. Cleaning solution and silence. No competing perfumes or cologne, no coffee breath or hurried conversations. Just Thomas and the building, alone together before the world woke up. He'd tried wearing his old watch once, the one with the scratched face and leather band that had survived longer than most friendships. But the class broke 2 months ago, and he hadn't bothered fixing it. Time moved the same whether you watched it or not. The break room on the 3rd floor smelled like burnt coffee and yesterday's lunch. Thomas emptied the trash bins, replaced the liners, wiped down the counters. Someone had left a half-eaten sandwich on the table. He wrapped it in a paper towel and threw it away. On the wall, a framed photograph showed the building's ribbon-cutting ceremony from 15 years ago. Mayor, city council members, department heads, everyone smiling. Thomas had cleaned the glass so many times he'd memorized their faces. Wondered sometimes if any of them still worked here, if they remembered that day, if ceremonies ever meant what people hope they would. "Hey, old man." Thomas turned. Derek Hastings stood in the doorway, 28 years old, junior attorney, expensive haircut. He held a coffee cup in one hand and his phone in the other. "You missed a spot yesterday. 3rd floor bathroom. Sink was disgusting." Thomas nodded slowly. "I'll check it again." "Yeah, you do that." Derek didn't wait for a response, just walked away, already scrolling through his phone. The sink had been clean. Thomas checked every bathroom twice before leaving each night. But he'd learned a long time ago that some arguments weren't worth having. Some people needed someone to look down on, made them feel taller. He found Margaret in the file room around 8:30. She was the only person in the building who ever said good morning. 62 years old, worked in records for almost 30 years. Always wore a small silver cross on a chain. "Coffee?" She held up a thermos. "I'm good, thank you." "You sure?" "I made extra." She poured herself a cup in a chipped mug that said "World's Best Mom." "My daughter gave me this 15 years ago. Handle broke off twice. I keep gluing it back." Thomas smiled. Things worth keeping usually need a little fixing. Isn't that the truth? She sat down at her desk, surrounded by filing cabinets that probably predated the building itself. "You hear about the presidential visit?" Thomas paused mid-step. "Next week. Tuesday, I think. President's coming through on some kind of tour. Veterans Initiative or infrastructure thing, I don't know. Security called yesterday asking about building access." She took a sip of coffee. "They're gonna make us all crazy with preparations." "I imagine so." Margaret studied him over the rim of her mug. "You military, Thomas?" The question landed quietly, but he felt it. Long time ago. "My late husband was Navy, Korean War. Never talked about it much." She looked at her coffee. "Some men carry things different. He used to say the weight doesn't get lighter. You just get used to holding it." Thomas felt something shift in his chest. He sounds like a wise man. He was. She set down the mug carefully. Died 3 years ago. Heart attack. Quick. He would have wanted it that way. I'm sorry. Me too. She smiled, but her eyes stayed sad. Anyway, I should let you work. Thomas nodded, picked up his mop bucket. I should finish the East Wing. Course. I'll see you tomorrow. The East Wing housed the senior staff offices. Thick carpet, wood paneling, paintings that probably cost more than Thomas made in a year. He vacuumed carefully, moving around desks, emptying smaller trash bins filled with crumpled paper and protein bar wrappers. On one desk, a framed photo showed a young Marine in dress blues. Thomas stopped, studied it. The Marine couldn't have been more than 22. Crew cut, straight posture, eyes that hadn't seen much yet. The kind of eyes that still believed war had clear answers. Can I help you? Thomas looked up. A man in his 50s, gray suit, wedding ring, reading glasses hanging from a lanyard. Just emptying the trash, sir. Right. Well, be quick about it. I've got a conference call in 10 minutes. He sat down, already reaching for his computer mouse. Thomas emptied the bin, moved to the next office. Behind him, he heard the man's keyboard clicking. Fast, urgent, like everything in this building moved. Lunchtime, the building filled with noise. Conversations echoed through hallways. The cafeteria on the ground floor served sandwiches and soup. Thomas ate outside on a bench near the parking garage. He'd brought a turkey sandwich from home, wrapped in wax paper, and a thermos of water. A group of younger staff members sat at a table nearby, laughing about something on someone's phone. Thomas ate quietly, watching pigeons fight over a discarded French fry. One pigeon, smaller than the others, kept getting pushed away. But it kept coming back. Persistent little thing. You think they even notice us? Thomas turned. Another maintenance worker, Luis, sat down beside him. He was 40, had 3 kids, worked the day shift cleaning the parking garage. Them. All of them. Luis gestured toward the building. We're ghosts, man. I've worked here 8 years. You know how many people know my name? 3. Maybe. Thomas took a bite of his sandwich. Doesn't bother you? Luis asked. I've been invisible before. You get used to it. Yeah? Well, I don't want to get used to it. Luis pulled out his own lunch, a container of rice and beans. I got a daughter starting college next year. Wants to be a doctor. A doctor, man. She's gonna know I exist. That's what matters. That does matter. That matters most. Luis smiled. You got kids, Thomas? No. Wife? Had one. Long time ago. Thomas folded the wax paper from the sandwich. Didn't work out. My fault, mostly. I wasn't home much. Luis nodded. Didn't push. Just ate his rice. They sat together in comfortable silence. 2 invisible men on a bench, watching the world ignore them. Louis stood up eventually, crumpled his lunch bag. I got a daughter starting college next year. She's gonna know I exist. That's what matters. Good man, Thomas said. Louis walked back toward the garage. Thomas finished his sandwich, folded the wax paper into a neat square, and tucked it into his pocket. His mother had taught him that. Never waste, never litter, never forget where you came from. The afternoon moved like most afternoons, cleaning, hauling, replacing supplies. Thomas restocked the second-floor bathrooms, fixed a leaking soap dispenser, replaced a flickering light bulb in the stairwell. The kind of work nobody noticed until it wasn't done. Around 3 p.m., he saw Derek Hastings again, this time in the main lobby, talking with 2 other attorneys. They were laughing about something. Derek noticed Thomas. Hey, janitor, we need the conference room cleaned by 4. Important client meeting. Thomas nodded. I'll take care of it. Make sure you do. Last time there were crumbs on the table. One of the other attorneys smirked. You expecting 5-star service, Derek? I'm expecting basic competence. Derek looked at Thomas like he was reading a parking meter. That too much to ask? Thomas met his eyes, held them for just a moment. I'll have it ready. He cleaned the conference room, wiped down the table, vacuumed under the chairs, emptied the recycling bin, straightened the chairs so they were perfectly aligned. When he finished, the room looked untouched, spotless. The kind of clean that took years to perfect. Derek never said thank you. That evening, Thomas locked the service entrance at 7:30. The sun was setting, painting the building's windows orange and gold. Beautiful, really, if you stopped to notice. Most people didn't. He walked 6 blocks to the bus stop, sat on the metal bench, and waited. The bus was late. The apartment was small. Kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, living room that barely fit a couch and television. Thomas made himself dinner. Chicken breast, steamed vegetables, white rice. He ate at the small table by the window, looking out at the street below. On the bookshelf, between a Bible and a collection of Steinbeck novels, sat a wooden box. Thomas opened it carefully. Inside, folded with precision, a flag. Beside it, 3 medals he hadn't looked at in years. A photograph, too. Younger men in desert camouflage, squinting against the sun. Some of them hadn't made it home. He closed the box, turned off the light, went to bed. The next morning started the same way. 5 a.m., brass key, service entrance. But the building felt different. Security personnel walked the halls, checking doors, talking into radios. Men in dark suits with earpieces appeared on every floor. Margaret found Thomas near the elevator. Secret Service, they've been here since 6, checking everything. Presidential visits really happening? Tuesday, 2 days. She lowered her voice. They want background checks on all staff, maintenance included. Thomas felt something tighten in his chest. Background checks. Standard procedure, they said, nothing personal. She touched his arm lightly. You okay? You look pale. I'm fine. But he wasn't fine. That afternoon, a Secret Service agent stopped him outside the break room. Young guy, maybe 30, built like he lived in a gym. Thomas Brennan? Yes. Need to ask you a few questions. Routine security protocol. They sat in a small office. The agent asked about his address, how long he'd worked there, previous employment, criminal history. Standard questions, delivered in a flat, professional tone. Military service? The agent glanced at his tablet. Thomas hesitated. Yes. Branch? Army. Years of service? 32. The agent looked up. 32 years? Yes. Rank at discharge. Thomas felt the words catch in his throat. Colonel. The agent's expression changed, just slightly. A flicker of something that might have been surprise. He made a note, asked a few more questions. Where he'd served, what units, decorations. Thomas answered, briefly, honestly. Then the agent stood up. Thank you for your time, Mr. Brennan. That's it? That's it. The agent paused at the door, turned back. Appreciate your service, sir. The word hung in the air after he left. Sir. Thomas sat alone in the small office for several minutes before returning to work. His hands shook slightly when he picked up his mop. Monday came and went in a blur of final preparations. More security, more suits, more people talking into radios. The building transformed into something Thomas barely recognized. Metal detectors appeared in the lobby. Barricades went up outside. Staff received new badges with security clearances. Thomas received a badge with a red stripe, restricted access. He could clean designated areas only, nothing near where the president would be. Derek Hastings walked past him Monday afternoon, talking loudly on his phone. Yeah, I'll be in the room when he arrives. Got the VIP clearance. Perks of the job, man. He didn't notice Thomas standing 3 feet away, emptying a trash bin. Tuesday morning, Thomas arrived at 4 a.m. instead of 5. Security made him go through the metal detector twice, checked his cleaning supplies, searched his bucket. One agent even unscrewed the mop handle to look inside. Finally waved him through. The first floor was off limits. Thomas cleaned the upper floors, working quickly, staying out of sight. He could hear activity below, voices, movement, the hum of something important happening. Around 10 a.m., Margaret found him on the 4th floor. Her face looked strange, excited, nervous. Thomas, They're asking for you downstairs. I don't know. Security, I think. They just said to find Thomas Brennan. His heart hammered. Did I do something wrong? I don't think so. But you should go, right now. Thomas took the stairs. His knees ached. They always did. But the elevator felt too slow. On the ground floor, 2 Secret Service agents waited. One of them was the young guy who'd interviewed him. Mr. Brennan, please come with us. Am I in trouble? No, sir. Just come with us. They led him through corridors he'd cleaned 1,000 times, past offices and conference rooms, toward the main ceremonial hall where the president would be speaking. Thomas's mouth went dry. I don't have clearance for this area. You do now. The agent opened the door. The hall was filled with people, local officials, veterans, community leaders. At the front, a podium with the presidential seal, cameras everywhere, lights, reporters. Thomas stood frozen in the doorway. Sir, please. The agent gestured toward the side of the room. Thomas walked carefully, aware of his janitor's uniform, his worn shoes, his calloused hands. He stood near the wall, trying to disappear, trying to become invisible again. Then the room went quiet. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States. Everyone stood. Thomas stood. His hands trembled slightly. He tucked them into his pockets. The President entered, flanked by more Secret Service. Confident stride, presidential smile, working the room. He moved toward the podium, shaking hands, nodding, acknowledging people. The speech began. Infrastructure investment, veteran support, community partnerships. Thomas heard the words, but didn't process them. He focused on breathing, on staying still, on not drawing attention. And before I continue, the president said, looking down at notes, I've been made aware that someone very special is in this room today. Thomas felt the floor tilt. Someone whose service to this nation spans 3 decades. Someone who led men in combat, earned the Distinguished Service Cross, and commanded a battalion during some of our military's most challenging operations. The president looked up, scanning the room. Someone who now works quietly in this very building, asking for nothing, expecting no recognition. People started looking around. Colonel Thomas Brennan, would you please step forward? The room erupted in whispers. Heads turned, eyes searched. Thomas couldn't move. The Secret Service agent touched his shoulder gently. Sir, that's you. I'm not, I don't. Sir. Thomas walked forward. Each step felt impossible. The crowd parted. Faces stared. He saw Derek Hastings standing near the front, mouth open, eyes wide. He reached the podium. The president extended his hand. Colonel Brennan, it's an honor. Thomas shook it. The president's grip was firm, warm. I understand you've been working maintenance here for 6 years. Yes, Mr. President. And before that, you served 32 years in the United States Army. Yes, sir. You led the 3rd Battalion during Operation Desert Storm. Your unit held a critical position for 72 hours under heavy fire. You refused evacuation despite being wounded. Saved 37 men. The president paused. 37 fathers, sons, brothers, because of you. The room was completely silent. You received the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, and the Bronze Star with Valor device. The president looked at the crowd. This man is a genuine American hero. Someone started clapping, then another. Then the entire room erupted in applause. Thomas stood there, overwhelmed, uncertain where to look. The lights felt too bright, the room too loud. The president leaned closer. Why didn't you tell anyone? Didn't seem. The president shook his head, smiling. Colonel, your service is always relevant. The applause continued. People stood. Thomas saw Margaret near the back, crying, smiling. He saw Lewis, who'd somehow gotten inside, clapping so hard his hands must have hurt. He saw Derek Hastings, pale, staring. After the speech, after the photos, after the handshakes and thank yous, Thomas found himself alone, in a quiet hallway. The ceremony had ended. The president had left. The building slowly returned to normal. Derek appeared. He walked slowly, stopped a few feet away. I didn't know. Thomas said nothing. I'm sorry for how I spoke to you. I didn't know who you were. Thomas looked at him, really looked at him, saw a young man desperate to be important, terrified of being invisible. You shouldn't need to know who someone was to treat them with respect. Derek's face crumpled. I know. You're right. He stopped, started again. Can I buy you coffee sometime? I'd like to hear about your service, if you're willing to share. I don't talk about it much. I understand. Derek extended his hand. But if you ever want to, I'd be honored to listen. Really listen. Thomas shook his hand. Maybe. Derek nodded, walked away, but this time he looked back. Thank you, Colonel, for everything you did, and I'm sorry for everything I didn't. The next morning, Thomas arrived at 5 a.m., same brass key, same service entrance. But when he walked through the lobby, people nodded, said good morning, used his name. The woman who'd said excuse me without looking stopped. Mr. Brennan, I wanted to apologize. I've been rude. I'm sorry. It's okay. It's not, but thank you for accepting my apology. She smiled, genuinely. Have a good day, sir. Thomas cleaned the same floors, emptied the same trash, fixed the same problems, but the weight felt different now. Lighter somehow. Or maybe he'd just gotten used to carrying it. Margaret brought him coffee around 9. You didn't have to come back, you know, after yesterday. You could have retired, done something easier. This is easy. You know what I mean. Thomas took the coffee, sipped it, still too sweet, but he didn't mind. I spent 32 years leading men, making decisions that cost lives, carrying weight I'll never put down. He looked at her. This is peaceful, honest work. Nobody dies if I miss a spot. She nodded slowly. My husband used to say something similar. He worked construction after the war, said he liked building things that stayed built. Exactly. But you deserve recognition, Thomas. You deserve respect. I had respect, had a title, had men salute me every morning. He set down the coffee cup. Didn't make me happy. Didn't make me good. He picked up his mop. I'd rather be decent than decorated. Margaret smiled. I think you're both. That afternoon, Thomas found an envelope on his cleaning cart. Inside, a handwritten note on expensive paper. Colonel Brennan, I spoke with my grandfather last night. He served in Vietnam. I told him what I did, how I treated you, and he didn't speak to me for an hour. Then he said, a man's worth isn't in his uniform, it's in how he treats people when nobody's watching. I'm sorry, not because you're a colonel, because you're a human being who deserves better. If you'll allow it, I'd like to try again. Derek Hastings. Thomas folded the note, put it in his pocket. Maybe people could change. Maybe respect could be learned. Maybe titles didn't matter as much as he'd once believed. That evening, he rode the bus home as the sun set. The city moved around him, indifferent and endless. Inside his apartment, he opened the wooden box, looked at the folded flag, the medals, the photograph of men who'd trusted him with their lives. He'd earned them honestly, worn them proudly, but they'd never defined him. His mother had taught him that too. Character isn't what you wear, it's what you do when nobody's watching. Thomas closed the box, made dinner, sat by the window, and felt for the first time in years like maybe being invisible hadn't been such a terrible thing after all. Because now people saw him. Not the medals, not the rank, not the title, just Thomas.